Well guys, Sam and Richie were nice enough to provide us with breakfast burritos this morning, and not only were they awesome, but they were super hot. And we discovered probably our new favorite device, this little burrito heater. I'm gonna show this to you guys.
Plugged in to the cigarette lighter here, keeping the burritos warm.
Doesn't get much more legit than that. Jordan trying to land his first kokanee of the day.
First kokanee of my life.
So we're using our 4.5-inch Dodger. A lot of people think they're a flasher. The difference between a Dodger and a flasher is one, size, and then another thing is a Dodger going through the water, it does this. A flasher does circular motion rolls.
So we tip both hooks of our lure with shoe peg corn. The corn we're using today is mixed with tuna packed in oil. We just use the oil.
Right there. Well, I feel kind of dumb because we've been on here for a while and nobody's been steering the boat and it's been turning. And I was just like, what is going on here? Like, is this like some sort of GPS wizardry that we got going on? How are we avoiding other boats? Turns out trolling motors have come a long way since I knew anything about trolling motors, and they're controlling it remotely. So that's pretty awesome and I feel pretty dumb.
Well guys, we ended the day with a bit of a surprise catch. I asked earlier if Sam or Richie had ever caught anything besides a kokanee on the charter, and they said yeah. And so our last fish of the day, Elise catches a super nice rainbow, probably, I don't know, 16 or 18 inches, and super fat, really beautiful fish. So definitely surprised to catch that fish, but she was stoked and so were we.
So now that we're done with the catching part of the episode, it's time to move on to the cooking part. On the menu today is Salmon Benedict. Now if you're the kind of person who's like, fish for breakfast, that seems kind of weird. I used to be in that camp, but trust me, it's really good. The very first thing we need to do is fillet our salmon, but lucky for us, Richie took care of that on the boat. If you want to make this Salmon Benedict yourself, we'll have a full list of ingredients in the description along with the measurements for each ingredient. So the first thing we need to do is smoke the salmon, and to start that process we're going to brine it. Today we'll be using a brine called Scott's, but any brine will do. This package that I have does about 12 pounds of fish, so I'm only going to be using a small amount of the package. Creating the brine is super easy. We just basically take the amount of water that it says and we add the contents of the package. One important thing to note is that you want to use a non-metallic container for this. Once we have the fish in the brine, we need to let it sit for 6 hours. Now that we've finished brining, we need to wash off the fillets and pat them dry. Once we pat them dry, we're going to set them on the smoker rack without any heat, and we're going to let them dry in the rack for an additional 30 minutes. Now that the salmon has been able to dry for 30 minutes, we're going to smoke it at 180 degrees until the internal temp of the salmon is 140 degrees. So I'm planning on this taking about 3 hours, but this can vary pretty widely depending on what smoker you're using, how big the fillets are, and things like that. So I'd start checking at 2 to 2.5 hours just to make sure you don't overdo it. Now that we have our perfectly smoked salmon, it's time to make the rest of the Benedict. First thing we need to do is toast the English muffins. I don't own a toaster, so I'm using a pan. Is it weird that I don't own a toaster? After you're done creatively toasting your English muffins, it's time to make the hollandaise. The hollandaise we're making today requires 3 egg yolks. A simple trick I like to use to separate the yolks from the whites is to use a plastic bottle. Next, we add the lemon juice and the salt, and then we stir it up with our immersion blender. You can also do this in a standard blender. Or a fork if you're feeling old school, but you really gotta get in there. Next, you're gonna wanna melt a 1/2 cup of butter in the microwave. It's important that the butter's hot and not just melted, because when you pour it into the egg mixture, you need it to emulsify, and it won't if it's not really hot. Once that butter is good and hot, we wanna slowly add it to the egg mixture, stirring continuously. To poach the eggs, the first thing we need to do is bring a pot of water to just below the boiling point. While we're waiting for the water to heat up, we can prepare the eggs. So I like to crack the eggs into a very fine strainer and kind of drain out some of the whites, because this helps get away the wispy part of the egg that makes your eggs Benedict look kind of haphazard. This isn't strictly necessary, but I do recommend it if the person you're making it for cares about presentation, like my wife. Once the water is up to temp, we dump the eggs into the water and we let them sit there untouched for exactly 3 minutes. After 3 minutes is done, we use a slotted spoon to retrieve the eggs. For the final step, we need to plate our salmon Benedict. We take the English muffins, we put the fillet on top, we add the poached egg, and we smother it in hollandaise. Bam! Perfect salmon Benny.